Students work the hardest out of anyone because, you know, they're trying to figure out themselves.
What made you want to come to USC in the first place, or why have you ended up at USC?
So I was really headstrong about college. Then come my senior year, everything had changed like overnight. I was reached out through Twitter by a producer, and he was huge at the time. And he was my favorite producer as well. He just like DM'd me through Twitter. He reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would you like to work with me?" And then we worked together for a long time, and I got a record deal immediately after with a major label. And that was like the month of applications for USC. Like the day I turned 17, I was offered the record deal, and just the legal information was overwhelming, and I ended up passing the deal. And I was a minor and everything, so there wasn't like a obligation to the company. So I passed the deal. I didn't sign anything yet, and I was like, well, I just said no to USC, so that's a huge risk. Well, graciously enough, they worked out some things to where I could apply late that same year. And so by the time that I had like applied, I got my acceptance letter like a week later. I had literally gone from like signing this like 360 agreement in the music industry with my favorite label on the planet, to like filling out the FAFSA for like financial aid. So it was like complete 360. My parents went through a whirlwind.
Do you attribute being found to just having put out some demos and that kind of thing?
Some way that I put myself out there and like reached out to people obviously wasn't overlooked. And I think a lot of people are nervous too, because it's kind of like filling out for scholarships. Like you put in all this work and you don't hear back, or like, you know, it's just tedious, but in the grand scheme of things, you just don't know who's paying attention.
Could you just tell me about one moment so far that you felt like is the biggest success of your career?
Yeah. So he texted me and was like, "Hey, like, are you free tonight? We need to finish tracking this record because Spinnin' wants to release it soon." I was like, "Yeah, for sure. Like, where do you want me to meet you? Like, what studio are you doing this in?" And I was like in Spanish class, like texting this. And he was like, "Are you cool to meet at Calvin's house?" And I was like, "Okay, sure. I don't know who Calvin is, but I'll for sure." And my dad had driven me, and he drove me everywhere. Thanks, Dad. And so we were driving up to like this huge like Beverly Hills like estate. Like it wasn't even a mansion. It was like several mansions in an estate. There's like security like escorting us up and stuff. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this is Calvin Harris's home. And like as soon as that record was released, I just got like texts from everyone that was saying like, hearing your song in this restaurant, or like in this thing, and da 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 on the radio. So like those moments are really surreal.
If you could tell me a little bit about some of your biggest failures and some of the like biggest struggles that you've had.
Yeah, the EP that's actually coming out like this week, it had already been made and everything, and I was kind of like pitching it around, and like people were telling me at the time like, "Oh, it's really cool." And like just that, like they weren't really like about it because it wasn't pop music, and they're like, "I don't hear a hit in this, you know, I only hear like, I hear an album but I don't hear singles, like I don't hear anything that, you know, is radio friendly and needs to be pop." And kept going over and over, and it was like, needs to be pop, and like I don't hear a hook in it. And that just really pissed me off, because I was like, there's not supposed to be a hook in it. And I was like, if this doesn't work, and if this sound doesn't work, then I will just become like a music business person. And I was totally happy with that. But it was a whole summer of like total insecurity and, you know, confusion, and I was really at a crossroads with like if I should do this thing. So I eventually showed the EP to Moving Castle, and you know, a year later they were like, "I think we should pick this up and take it seriously," and they were the most supportive about it. taking risks, are risky. Like, just in general, like, the future and, like, betting on yourself is scary, but, like, you really don't know unless you try.